again. This is another episode of Vancouver Real, episode number 30. And of course, as always, we are broadcasting out of Float House, which is Vancouver's and North America's largest sensory deprivation and flotation center. And if you'd like to learn more about flotation therapy, just check out our website, www.floathouse.ca. And if you use the promo code RECOVERY, you'll receive a 20% discount on a single float. And as always, with me today is my brother Mike.
What's going on, everybody? I'm back at the helm.
And of course, we should always mention Omed, our tech support from Omega Point. He runs a very popular Omega channel. What are his channels again? What are they?
It's Omega Point YouTube channel.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Omega Point YouTube channel. And he makes all these really awesome, cool, inspirational videos. Go check him out and be inspired. And today, I'm very excited. We are going to take you guys on a journey through the world of floating, like we haven't done for a long time. The last time we had a really good float conversation was with Graham Talley at Float On. Yeah. And today we have with us Sean Lavery from Float Toronto. Welcome to Vancouver Real.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me out.
Yeah, we're excited. So this has been it's been really interesting. Our journeys are now kind of converging on one spot. And you guys have had an amazing startup in Toronto with Float Toronto.
It's been a great time. We've had a good experience from day one opening the center and even the 3 months leading up to it. It was a long process, a bit longer than we would have hoped for in the beginning. But ultimately, we got to open our doors at the end of August, and right away we started having really positive experiences with all our customers. Everyone's having a really good float experience, and that's what we were aiming to do.
So before we get too far into it, what's your address? It's
www.float-toronto.com is the website. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And he's on also Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, and go check him out there. So yeah, it's really cool. And so how has Toronto? In fact, I had a friend who was early on wanting to open a float center in Toronto with us, but he's actually a member of the Toronto Police Service. So he's got a stable career, and he wasn't quite ready to give that up at this point.
Yeah, it can be tough to do.
Yeah, and he was just concerned because, in his opinion, he thought that people in Vancouver, and this could be a good argument, are just different in general, and that he thought that it wouldn't be the same market in Toronto.
Yeah, so there's a couple of counter arguments to that. First one is that people actually are quite similar. There's a lot of people doing yoga there. Yoga is massive. It's huge. So people, I think that's just a general movement in society, Canadian, North American society, towards healthier living. So that's happening across the board, I think, maybe more so in Vancouver. But if you were to argue that people in Vancouver are anywhere from 30% to twice as likely to be interested in those types of things, the numbers in Toronto work out. So there's double the amount of people, right?
I'd agree. Yeah. I'd agree 100%. And I was really trying to convince them, I guarantee you, if you open up in Toronto, you guys are gonna do extremely well. And sure enough.
You would have been right. As long as he approached with the right intention and really focusing on delivering a good experience to people. It can be tough to do in Toronto, particularly because of subways and streetcars. Yeah. It can be really tough to deliver a soundproofed experience. We struggled with that a little bit recently, actually. When we opened, we put a ton of effort into soundproofing, making sure we were completely bulletproof. And then actually we had a really mild winter, and just until a few weeks ago, we couldn't hear a thing. And then when it got really cold, it seems that things got a little bit louder. Ground got harder. Streetcars got louder.
Vibrations are traveling.
And vibrations are traveling into the building a little bit. So we've been able to hear the streetcar over the last few weeks. We're gearing up for some upgrades over the next little bit to dim those down. We've had some sound engineers come through and have a look at the space, and we'll be making sure we limit those.
Well, that's the thing too. Floating is such a new industry, and no one has the perfect center down pat yet. And
not even close. It's going to be a long process.
It's a constant game of tweaking. We are constantly, for us at Float House, we're basically continually investing money into the center, trying to improve our service all the time. We're always trying new things, always experimenting. And we're just trying to tweak up our service as best as can be all the time. And I'm sure you guys are doing the exact same thing.
Absolutely. That's the only way to approach this if you really want to deliver a good experience. Word of mouth is so powerful in this industry. People are telling all their friends about floating, and you want to make sure they're telling them good things. So you really have to focus on that experience you're giving to people in general. And in order to make sure we do that, every Tuesday when we shut down for maintenance day, we're making several upgrades to the center. And it's always something, it can be small things, it can be big things, but there's always a few things in mind.
Forward.
We set a few things up on Monday, and on Tuesday we put them in every week.
Yeah. That's what you got to do. You got to be responsive, and it's never stagnant. You're either going to be disintegrating or growing. So hopefully you're in that growing state of mind, right?
Yeah.
So you went through Float-On's entire, did you go through the whole program?
I actually didn't. My business partner Jesse went down there.
Okay.
He had a fantastic time. I had a really good time learning from those guys. I've had a chance to speak with most of them on the phone. They're just amazing guys. Really thankful that they've kind of set up that program so we can all learn from them. It was really huge for us.
Well, they're a huge inspiration for us. Like when we were first starting designing our business model and everything back in like 2010, we were originally going to do it like a yoga and floating combo. And then we got scared off because yoga in the city is just saturated. In fact, we were watching the opening of Chopra Yoga because it was very comparable to Y Yoga in terms of caliber and everything like that. And we watched their opening, and they were just really empty and really struggling. We're like, okay, we're not doing yoga anymore. Yeah. And then we took one trip down to Portland, and we both floated there. We just chatted with the guys for a little bit, and on the whole drive back, we were like, we got to do a float center. We're opening a float center up.
Yeah, and that's kind of probably to some extent a happy accident, because I do think that float centers in the long term, it's best to just have a designated float center. It has a different vibe than any combined services in terms of it's just quieter. Like for example, I went to Ovarium and they have a fantastic facility. They have everything there is amazing. My floats there were awesome, but I do think that there's something to a more simplified business. There's less going on when you come in the door. There they have about 5 massage rooms, or correct me if I'm wrong, it could be more than that or less than that, but they have a lot going on in the center, a lot more than just floating, which is great. It offers some more some different experiences. You can get the pulsar, which is fantastic to combine with the float. You can get a massage, which a lot of people like combining with floats, but ultimately I really like the intention of just coming into a float center, not having to talk to anyone, not having to interact with too many people, and just having a very quiet atmosphere.
Yeah, it's true. Sorry, on the kind of case-by-case basis, like some people are really chatty and they want to talk about their experience, and some people just don't. They want to be left alone. You got to be sensitive towards that when you're
very much so. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I was just gonna get really hippie on you guys a little bit and just say,
let's do it.
When you come out of a float, or if you're going into a float, your state, especially if you're a relatively experienced floater, your state it's very different. Like the type of state that you cultivate after your float is very unique. It's different than a massage. It's different than a yoga class. It's its own thing. And then, so in my mind, having just a pure float center, which is what we have here at Float House as well, is just it's just it's letting everyone have that same energetic experience. Exactly, You know what I mean? Whereas if you had other things, it's a big deal. I mean, I'm getting really hippie and nitty picky on this, but there's something to that too. It's like, this is just what it's all about. And that kind of vibe permeates this place. Yeah. And we get that a lot when people come in here off the streets. As soon as they come in, I'm sure you guys get at Float Toronto, they come in there like, they're just like, oh, this is place. What is this place?
It's a different energy in here. It's just quiet and calm. And it's a bit of an oasis from that world out there. It's kind of crazy downtown Toronto.
Yeah, exactly.
Like in Gastown, Vancouver, for sure.
Yeah. But, why don't you take us back to maybe a little bit about your past history and stuff, and what got you spawned into this whole industry.
This
and all
that
kind
started
of stuff.
like it has for a lot of people who started float centers about 4 or 5 years ago. It started popping up all over the internet, and then I started hearing about it on the Rogan podcast, and just thought it sounded really interesting, wanted to try it. Jesse and I both thought it sounded really interesting as a business, and by the time we got around to trying it, we were just in love with it, love with the idea of doing that for a living versus just the regular jobs we had. It wasn't
what were you doing
fulfilling.
before it?
I was basically running online businesses. I had a couple things going into warehouse in Delta, and it was just no natural light, no interaction with your customers. Online particularly, there's a lot of interaction actually with your complaints, negative customers, negative customer interactions, and that kind of sucks. It just sucks from like when you zoom out of your life, when you go for a float, you can de-stress and say I made 97% of the people happy, and like I know that out there somewhere, but you don't get that interaction in real life with the happy people. You just kind of get to interact by email or by phone with the people who are complaining, and then your staff are feeling the same way. They're interacting with people in a negative way, and that just kind of permeates the whole thing, and it just wasn't
probably didn't feel good.
Yeah, it doesn't. Just
You
doesn't.
know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is a lot more fulfilling. It's a lot more fun hanging around a float center,
Yeah.
Oh,
dealing with
God.
people on a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
or just coming out or
The
going
vibe's
into floats.
completely different.
Yeah, it's totally different. So I'm
Mhm.
very happy we went this way.
Cool.
And that was the whole thing behind, in terms of reasoning behind why we wanted to do it. Yeah, so we were going to start up in Vancouver about 2.5 years ago, and that's when we found out that you guys were opening. We were both living here in Vancouver. You guys popped up on Facebook, and we're like, okay, I guess they beat us to it. And it wasn't really clear where this whole industry was headed back then.
Mhm. Oh yeah.
No one really knew if this was going to
Totally.
work.
Yeah.
I know you guys took a big gamble, and everyone really appreciates the work you guys did on that front.
Thank you.
But yeah, we just didn't know what to expect. So we're like, okay, we'll step back and see how this goes. And you guys did really, really well, of course. And
Yeah.
we just went from there. And we kind of had a feeling that Vancouver was going to get pretty crazy.
Yeah. Well,
once
you
that
said you
happened.
came and floated like the second day, so you were
Yeah,
you
yeah.
were
I
watching
was
us
excited
like a
just to
hawk,
have
eh?
somewhere to float.
Yeah, that's cool.
I was so excited to be able to float.
Yeah.
But with that being said, I was living in White Rock at the time. It was an hour drive, and it wasn't really
Yeah.
accessible to me
Mhm.
on a regular basis. And on top of that, you guys were booked like a week in advance back then.
Yeah.
When it was just the 5 tanks going, it was really tough to get in here.
Yeah.
So my schedule was busy, and I just wasn't getting in here enough. But yeah, so we kind of decided that Vancouver was going to get oversaturated. I originally was thinking kits, and I found you guys were opening kits. I was thinking Victoria. You guys were opening Victoria. I was like, okay, that's enough of that.
That's hilarious.
And we just basically decided to pack up and move to Toronto and do something very similar.
And what a great move.
Yeah, and we took something along the lines of what you guys had done and kind of put our own touches on it. One thing that we wanted to do that was slightly different was adding the lounge in, and obviously that was your guys' intention from the beginning.
Yeah.
But naturally, it was tough to do in the beginning because, like I said, it was a gamble.
It was a gamble.
Yeah.
We put this is definitely a minimal viable product in terms of a business model.
Yeah.
And we wanted to make sure that we tested this thing right before and that's
Yeah.
what you should do.
Absolutely.
You know? And even right now, I mean, the float industry, it's looking really good. And there are certain centers like Float Toronto, Float House, Float On, a couple in the States, like Zero Gravity Institute's doing really well.
True Rest,
True Rest.
Urban Float in Seattle, I think, and Float Seattle.
Some of them are doing really well, others are not. So it's still a little bit unclear. But you know, when you got guys like Zero Gravity, like they're backed by, like Rogan's always talking about them. They have On It behind them, so they have Aubrey Marcus floating there. All that whole crew is always down there.
And
floating.
they really executed. They have a beautiful place.
Beautiful
Yeah.
place. And they, you know, one thing I was told when I talked to Keith from there at the Float Conference last year was that they have a lot of soldiers in Texas, and a lot of the soldiers are using it to deal with PTSD stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's actually
Really
a podcast that Aubrey Marcus just had last week with a veteran soldier. I believe it's called like Vital Warrior or something like that. And he was a guy that's a PTSD survivor, and he's talking. He has this whole kind of program, a holistic kind of program for veterans to come back to deal with PTSD, be through like Kundalini yoga, floating, and
Interesting.
meditations and stuff like that, diet, all that kind of stuff. So it's like a holistic approach to dealing with PTSD because the government's just not really doing anything effective, right?
Yeah.
And then Aubrey did say that they're working with Zero Gravity to produce their own tanks, and they're probably going to start like bucking out centers together, I would imagine. That's my guess. I think On It's going to be all over that.
Yeah, it
you
makes a
know?
lot of sense.
Yeah,
I'm
so-
surprised it hasn't happened by now, to be
True.
honest with you.
Yeah. Well, they're probably working on it, and it's probably going to be like, you know, some sort of pretty mega launch.
Yeah.
Because look at their platform, right?
Yeah.
It's basically Joe Rogan.
Yeah. No, it's
So
a great
it's gonna be
platform.
crazy to watch.
Yeah.
But you know what, man? That's just gonna get so many people floating.
Exactly.
You
Yeah.
know?
It already has.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so and it's a wild ride. It's a wild ride. It's really unique to be on this.
For sure. One thing I really admired about what you guys did is like I thought your move was like smart. It was really smart. Just go to an entirely new market, open up in a big city where you knew like there was no risk or very minimal risk anyways in going there.
Yeah. I mean, there was still risk to some extent, but you're right.
You're lessening the
was
risk.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
We took a lot of the risk out.
Yeah.
Financing was still an issue. Like we didn't have a lot of money, right? We got pretty dry there for a bit. You know, went right down to the wire.
Yeah.
But so that was the biggest risk we took. But you're right. It was the safest move we could have made, and that's why we did it.
Yeah.
How was your the time leading up to your opening, the construction phase, and
man.
the leaks leading to it? Give us a little snapshot of what that was like for you and
It was
Jesse.
crazy. It was. I'm sure it was pretty similar for you guys, but we were there till 2 or 3 in the morning every single day, just building. Construction was behind, and we had to get open. We had nothing left.
Yeah.
So we just we worked around the clock. It was like go home, face plant on our beds
Just
for
the two of you
5
guys?
hours. Yeah, get up and do it again.
Yeah.
It was the two of us, and we had a lot of help from a good friend across the street. He, the guy who owns a juice and smoothie bar across the street, ended up just being like the most generous person in the world. On his birthday, he ended up staying there with us, working till 7 in the morning.
What's their company?
It's called Bolt.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. Shout out to Bolt.
Yeah, big shout out to Bolt. Infinite shout outs to Bolt. They were
That's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah,
Cool.
his name's Eddie. He's like the best guy ever, basically. And we couldn't have done without him.
And where
So
in
that-
Toronto are you guys located exactly?
We're on Queen Street West. Just if you're familiar with Toronto at all, it's just across from the Drake Hotel.
Cool.
Yeah.
All right. So go check it out. What
Well,
is the address though?
It's 1159.
There you go.
1159.
1159 Queen Street West, Toronto folk.
I think the startups for any business like this are just crazy. Like ours was really interesting. In fact, Mike had 2 of our staff
Yeah.
living with him
Yeah.
during the startup, and the stories I would hear from your place are pretty funny because he actually had the Oasis float tank set up in your condo as well.
No,
Right.
Samadhi.
Oh, Samadhi.
Right,
Sorry,
right.
Samadhi float tank. And you'd be sleeping in your bedroom, and like Garrett would be on the couch, and then you'd kind of wake up in the morning, and then Nick would just kind of pop out of the float tank, and be like, "Hey guys!" And
Yeah, dude.
and not to mention, it was like a storage unit. It had so much crap in there, just he was storing until we could get it in here and open up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, keeping
I
it
had
out of
like
the
all
way.
that artwork. I had like all of Jan's art collection. Like I had this huge art collection in my condo, taking up half my condo space because he went traveling and I wanted art for the center when we first opened up.
Yeah.
So I had all this crazy artwork in my place, and it was just such a wild time. And then of course our investors were getting really, really itchy to get open.
Yeah.
And they were
Yeah.
quite stressed out at the time. And luckily when we opened and we hit that live button, whatever you want to call that, it was just like boom.
Yeah.
And it was such a satisfying feeling.
Yeah, I'm
man.
sure it was. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, and the other thing about that too was that I don't know if you experienced this when you were planning it, but like friends, family, acquaintances, they were just like, "What is this float
Oh, yeah,
thing?
absolutely.
What's the float?
What are you guys
thing?
doing?"
What are you doing?
Yeah, there was a lot
What-
of that. There was
like-
Whoops.
there was definitely a lot of that, and we didn't quite have the same satisfaction for a couple of reasons in terms of when we opened, because we had 2 issues when we opened. One was that there was still construction going on next door, so we could only open half days. So we kind of had to do a softer opening to make sure
It's
we
smart
weren't
that you
just
did
completely
that though.
overloaded.
You guys like just
well, then that comes down. It comes back to making sure that the experience is good. We knew that word of mouth was going to be really powerful, and we knew that people were going to come back. They had to have a good experience, and we couldn't risk people hearing construction noise in the float.
Yeah.
It happened a couple times on weekends, and we just credited people
Yeah.
free floats and
Exactly.
And
Yeah. I
just-
mean,
Well, we did our build out here about people floating.
yeah, I
we
was
did-
surprised by that. It was
we
interesting.
did our build out, and like the thing, the construction was so random that some days would be really quiet, other days it'd be banging, and one
Yeah,
day
no,
they'd
that's
be
how it
start up
is.
and they'd be start hammering something, and be like,
For
crap,
sure.
you know?
Sometimes we go 3 days and we wouldn't hear anything. Like, man, we could have been open for the rest of the days.
so-
But you never know what's coming. You can't trust
so we
those
just decided
contractors.
that
So.
we'll float, and then if they get disturbed, we'll just comp them.
Exactly.
And that's what we did the whole time.
Yeah.
And we were open all the evenings, which was fine as well.
Yeah. So the
Uh,
second issue we had was that we didn't have a phone, which is crazy.
So
It
all
was really
emails?
crazy. It was basically what happened was we thought, we got a brand new retail unit in a brand new condo building downtown Toronto. There's no chance that it didn't even cross our mind to check if there was phone and internet in there. It's just a no-brainer, obviously.
Yeah.
And so we just built all the construction, and then it turns out that Rogers never wired our unit. It was a Rogers exclusive building, so Bell couldn't help us out, and there's no cell reception.
Wow.
So there was just no options.
so why didn't it get wired?
So Rogers, we booked them 3 times in September. They never came, and to this day they never came. We booked 2 more meetings, one in December and one last week, and they still haven't set up our phone and internet. We run everything through internet through a TELUS hub. Our internet bill is like you wouldn't believe. It's insane.
What is that all about, man?
Yeah, it's a crazy story. Rogers just refuses to do it, basically. It's so crazy.
But they have the rights to that building.
Yeah.
That is crazy.
Yeah, it's a crazy
That's
situation. And
bullshit.
so basically, until we figured out that TELUS actually got signal, because I was on Fido, which is on the Rogers network, so we just thought there was no cell reception in there.
Sure.
So until my brother came, who had a TELUS phone, about 3 weeks in, he told us that he was getting cell reception. So we went and got a hub and essentially paid about $600 a month in internet.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
You still doing that?
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy. So these are the things you have to work
gotta
through
do
as a new
You
business.
don't have a choice.
Next time we know to make sure we get internet and phone.
I mean, can't you go to the like? I mean, you have a lease. You have a landlord.
Yeah,
you
but there's
know?
nothing in there guaranteeing that we have internet connection.
Oh my God, I would just be
And
so
And
frustrated.
even then, I don't even know if they could get Rogers to do it. It's like
Probably not.
Yeah,
Probably
it's a crazy situation. Rogers just keeps coming and saying we don't, some kind of equivalent of we don't know how to do it or we can't get it to you or something like that. And we're talking about like very similar to your building, but downtown Toronto, like brand new condo building.
Yeah, no, I was there, and I remember. It's a
crazy.
brand new concrete building. You would not expect that at all. You'd be like, of course, this needs to be fully automated
Yeah,
for Wi-Fi and internet and phone and everything.
Yeah,
That
Yeah,
is.
so
That's the entrepreneurial journey for you right there.
exactly. Yeah.
But and, one thing, we've watched the float industry as you have extremely closely, and we watched a lot of centers open, and I haven't seen as many be as successful as what you've done out in Toronto.
And likewise, obviously.
You guys done an awesome job out there.
Yeah, I mean, we put in a lot of work.
Yeah.
I think a big part of it is we came at it with the right intention. Our goal, like you guys, is just to get as many people as floating possible. We had a lot of interaction with Float On in the beginning, and that rubbed off on us. They have the same mentality. And one piece of really good advice they gave us was just keep your tanks full. Just that's the number one priority. So we gave away a ton of floats, believing in the experience that we were providing people with, and word spread like wildfire. So it was a combination of marketing and just believing in that word of mouth power.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that is so powerful. And what would you say to a float center owner that's opening? What are the big things in terms of marketing?
Make sure you get a phone and internet line.
Okay, yeah, that one. Yeah.
Make sure you don't build on some kind of subway. If you have a streetcar, make sure you're taking care of that potential noise issues. And then the biggest thing is approach it with the right intention and make sure you keep those tanks full. So deliver the best possible experience. Make sure you have the buoyancy down. Make sure you have the temperature down. Make sure you have light proofing and soundproofing down. And then just make sure you keep those tanks full. Believe in what you're doing and provide people with a good experience and the other people will come.
Yeah, and because it's amazing. Like some people might be listening to this, like, oh, really? Like how intense? Like these tanks that are invented, like the different manufacturers, they're not a soundproof tank. So it's not like we just plop a tank into any room and it's going to be a soundproof.
They're good.
Float
They cut down a
experience.
lot of the sound. Like for example, when you hear the filtration system go on in the Oasis and you shut the door, it's almost silent.
Sure.
Like they do cut out most of the noise. But if you have any vibration coming through the ground or any really loud noises coming through the vents or anything like that, then you're going to hear them.
Yeah, and that's my point. It's like because when you go into a really good sensory deprivation environment, like a place or get into that space, once you start sinking in, your nervous system gets so sensitive that it will start picking up anything.
Everything.
It's actually kind of cool. It's really amazing because we don't really get that opportunity in our day-to-day lives, right? To go into a place so quiet to see what can I hear when things are super quiet.
And then of course when you come out, your senses are heightened as well, which
Totally.
is also very interesting.
Yeah, so it's kind of cool to but so that's the thing. As a float center owner, you go through so many like ridiculous, crazy efforts to try to make that experience as dark as possible, as quiet as possible. Make sure the buoyancy is correct.
You play with stuff every week. Like every
quality,
week,
all of that.
Yeah, we get up and grind every week, making sure we can try to improve that experience some way or another. Like every week, there's no time off.
So
everything from towel placement to exactly where we're putting the earplugs to, we went through probably 10 different shampoos before we found one that we like. Every detail, you're constantly trying to optimize.
Yeah,
and I think a lot of people don't understand that when they open a center. I think a lot of people think that it's going to be this kind of automated thing. You throw some tanks into it, and then people are going to show up, and you got a float center. Boom.
Right.
It is not that at all.
No. Well, I mean, it can be if your intention is to try to make some money and run a business. But if your intention is a little bit bigger in terms of trying to just get people floating, then you have to kind of come at it from a different angle, and it requires a lot more work in that sense.
So what's your take on the industry as a whole right now? Like, where do you think it is? Where do you think it's going?
I think it's in a very interesting place. I think that two things need to happen in order for it to really hit the mainstream. And one of them is going to be a little bit more research because there's so many different things that it's helping with, right? From chronic pain to stress relief, anxiety, PTSD, all these different areas. And we need more hard science behind all of them. So that's going to take some research. And then once the research has been done, we need some real vocal doctors getting the word out there. Because ultimately, if I show up at a conference for doctors, they're going to say, like, what's your background? What do you know?
Yeah.
And they're not going to listen to me.
Yeah.
So we need some really vocal, knowledgeable people out there doing research and then spreading the word. And so we can spread the word through the general population as best we can, anecdotal evidence and just sharing experiences and everything like that. But I think ultimately that's only going to get us so far. And if we really want, I think we all believe that floating has a real potential here to kind of change society in a small way, at least, right? Like in the same sense that yoga does, or any other kind of health practice, even just eating healthier, meditation. There's a lot of opportunity out there to kind of change people's lives, and floating is one of them. Even if it just accounts for a very small percentage of that, it's still big in a sense. Yeah. And but there's a long way to go before we get there.
Well, and for people like, you know, who are into floating, I think what you just said there was, you know, you're playing it down. Because the actual potential of it is crazy big, because it actually starts to change how you observe yourself, observe your world, how you think, how you feel, which that changes everything. You start changing yourself from the inside, that's going to change everything on your outside.
Right. No, I think it absolutely has a massive potential. I'm just, my point is just that not to be too dogmatic about it and say that, you know, there's lots of things that can accomplish that same end. Like, for example, for me, rugby changed my life. Just it forced me to look at everything in a different way.
Right.
It requires that you check your ego and really embrace more of a team mentality. And it just like, so point being that yoga can do that, meditation can do that, eating healthier can do that, the right job could do that for you, for the right person, right? So there's lots of ways to do it, and I just think floating is one way, and but it's certainly a way. Yeah.
Well, and it's a very unique way in itself, right? Like it's, you know, many float centers people or float enthusiasts say how, you know, that environment literally does not exist anywhere else on Earth.
Yeah.
You know, it's a one-of-a-kind environment which generates a one-of-a-kind response, you know. But I guess you can say that about rugby. It's a unique sport. And so I kind of just defeated my own argument there. But
but really, I mean, it is a completely unique environment.
Yeah, right? No, it is.
I mean, we came up in football backgrounds. Like we played all through high school, through university and that. Yeah. And I can definitely say that football didn't impact my life the same way that floating has. Football made me definitely more competitive, more aggressive. Definitely got a lot of injuries from football. And floating kind of does the opposite. It makes me a little more aware, a little more in tune, helps me heal up some of those injuries. You know, so I think, you know, in terms of developing team mentality, sure. But in terms of developing a meditation kind of practice, I think floating is an amazing tool for it.
Yeah, no, I guess point being that there's lots of different things that can improve your life. And for me, what rugby did more, it wasn't the same as floating in any way. But what it did for me was just demonstrate what hard work and dedication where it can get you. Even for me, it wasn't like I didn't get super far or anything. It was just I did see improvement. Right. So when you work hard, you improve. So like point being, you can do that in any area. It's the same thing with the yoga practice. You work hard and you get more flexible and you feel healthier and you're less stressed and your relationships improve and all those things. So you work hard at anything and you get better at it. And point being, there's lots of ways to improve your life. Right.
Yeah, definitely. Let's why don't you tell us about your first ever float?
My first ever float was I forget how long ago now, but it was at Lavery in Montreal, and I'd been dying to float for years, and it was really awesome. I was really overworked, overstressed. I was working crazy hours.
Were you living in Montreal?
I was living in Vancouver, and it was my first vacation. Basically, I hadn't taken more than maybe a day off in over 2 years, and I was, like I said, overworked, overstressed, and I took my first vacation in Montreal to visit my brother. And we spent the week kind of playing hockey, and then I went for a float, and it was just so awesome. I was like, it carried over for a few days, and then something really stressful happened at work, and I was like, okay, I need another float, but there was nowhere to float yet. Yeah. So that's kind of where it all started for me. I wanted to kind of be able to float more accessibly whenever I wanted, and it just wasn't an option yet, and I thought that should be there for everyone. Cool. And Ovarium was really inspiring in the sense that I went there. They have 6 tanks going. The weekend I tried to go, they were fully booked. I went on a wait list, and I got in on the Sunday. But I was really impressed by that. It meant it was a viable business, and if it could work in Montreal, there's no reason it couldn't work in Vancouver. And I just wanted to kind of shift gears in life, and that seemed like a really interesting opportunity.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
No, I mean, Ovariums, they've been around over 30 years now.
Yeah, it's
you
very
know, they
impressive.
started out with 2 tanks, went
Yeah.
to 4, now the 6th. They're in this big old bank
They
building.
have a beautiful
It's really
building,
cool.
beautiful setup. Like I said, I didn't mean to criticize what they were doing there. They just have lots going on, and
Sure.
It's all personal preference in terms of
no,
where you think what you think your float center should be like.
Yeah.
But I had an amazing time there, and
Cool.
it was like
Well,
it
there
was
you go.
life changing. So it was
Yeah.
it was a great experience.
'Cause imagine you went there and had a shitty experience or a
Right.
negative experience. Like, I mean, maybe you could look past it, but maybe you didn't. Maybe it was just like that negative. Maybe you would never have gone
Exactly.
into this.
Yeah, I'm sure that's the case.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's crazy. And why do you float? What do you personally get out of
There's so many different
out of
reasons,
floating?
and one of the things is you never really know what you're getting out of it. It depends on, there's a lot of variables, and one is going to be intention, and one is going to be just the state your body's in, the state your mind's in. If you're really stressed and your mind's racing in there, sometimes you go in and without any distractions, you're going to see that racing mind. You're going to get some thought patterns going, trains of thought, and you're going to see them down a rabbit hole that in regular life you might kind of get distracted and be able to jump away from them.
Right.
And there you're going to be able to see them all the way through. So it can be very introspective, and then sometimes you go in there after a workout or after a yoga class and you just zonk out.
Yeah.
And you come back an hour later when the music comes on, an hour and a half later.
Yeah.
So you never know what you're getting in there, and I float for stress relief, for rest, and when I have a problem in my life, I like going in there and kind of seeing it through.
Cool.
Where do you stand on the terms, the whole kind of idea of sensory deprivation versus rest? What do you think? What's your opinion on what's the more? Well, of course,
The
we know it's
terminology,
most
you mean?
Yeah, the terminology.
Which word do I like better?
Yeah.
I like floating better just because it's a little bit more simple. For simplicity's sake, I like floating. But I also, when you're explaining what floating is to someone, the term rest comes in handy too. And it's a nice acronym.
Yeah, definitely.
It's a little bit beautiful.
The reason we started using the term sensory deprivation quite a lot
Yeah.
was because that's what I was most popularly known as at the time.
Right.
For sure. Like
Yeah.
when Rogan was talking about it, he referred to it as sensory deprivation or isolation tank, as
Yeah.
he called it a lot. And we just felt like if people were looking for what he's talking about, that was the most popular term at the time.
Yep.
And we all know it's not necessarily the most accurate term, but it was what it was most known as. And rest is the most accurate term, which is restricted environmental stimulus therapy / technique.
Yeah.
And to explain that to every person every single time is kind of cumbersome.
For sure.
But that's why it's like you could just say floating.
Yeah.
But then again, floating is like, well, when you floating, I can float in a lake. You know,
Right.
and
No,
so you
sensory
get that a lot
deprivation is
too.
more accurate in that sense too.
Yeah.
I guess the one issue I have with that term, it has some kind of negative connotation.
Definitely.
The word deprivation has a slightly negative connotation, and as it is, people are already a little bit concerned about the claustrophobic aspect of floating, which we've had, tons and tons of people come through, lots on the verge of tears before they get in for the first time, and we've had maybe 2 or 3 people with a bad experience out of 6,000. So claustrophobia ends up not really being an issue. I'm sure you guys have
Generally
noticed the
not.
same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
But just in terms of quickly seeing the name or the term or the hearing about it in general, I think people like the softer word float.
Floating is
Yeah.
fun, friendly, relaxing. It's
exactly.
not intimidating at all.
Exactly. Yeah.
I just feel like sensory deprivation was it was just a good way to kind of kick it off, and it kind of adds an
Absolutely.
element of intrigue too,
Totally.
especially for those early adopters.
And we still use it often.
Yeah.
We still use it all the time.
Yeah, the early adopters, I think, were the ones who were kind of keen on that. And a lot of the early adopters, too, were very big on the whole consciousness exploration side of
Yep.
floating, which is a huge part of float culture. I mean, the father of floating,
Right.
John C. Lilly.
Yeah, that's
right?
what
This
it
guy
was.
went deeper than anybody in the world, basically. I mean, this
Yeah.
guy was dousing himself with ketamine and floating.
Yeah.
And he would set up contraptions so he wouldn't have to get out and use the bathroom, and he could just go in the tank so he wouldn't have to interrupt his float. And he took it to a whole nother level of going deep.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who initially wanted to try floating, especially here, those early adopter types, were kind of like they're in that kind of mindset. And now when you hit the more
For sure.
mainstream, that's kind of scary for some people.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've had a lot of people come through too saying it's almost like psychotherapy, just getting to talk to yourself in there, and I find that as well. I like going
would
in there
agree.
and kind of the self-talk in there is really good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No, for sure.
And I mean, I personally had some really deep experiences in there.
me too.
Yeah, some pretty nutty things happen. Like I've had full blown like I wouldn't say hallucinations, but like visuals and things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
I had completely nutty experiences. Like the one time Mike and I, before we went to True Rest, actually, when we were checking out the float pods down there, we floated all night. We basically floated from like 3 in the morning till 10, and then our flight left at like 12 or something like that. And we ended up floating for 7 hours. And yeah, and that I had my first full blow in like I'm in a different place experience. And
Right.
It was awesome. It was really cool, but it was really quick. And then it's just over, and I was just like awake in blackness again.
Yeah.
But it was very, very cool, and it showed me the potential that actually can happen.
Yeah, the most powerful experience I've had in there were more they were like HD visions of my childhood.
Oh, wow.
Really powerful
Nice.
memories.
Yeah.
Just like watching for like a straight hour, like a whole sequence of events that you remember perfectly that you like I can't remember now that clearly at all.
Right.
So that was really interesting, and I know actually, I'm sure you guys have seen this that Float Seattle video with the news anchor went in.
Yeah.
And he had something
That
very
was great.
similar
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah.
very similar. I
What
was
a great piece that was, too.
Yeah, it was for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, he was basically tearing up, and I was too in the tank. It was really interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool. I think that the power of going into that space, it helps. It starts to like loosen that boundary of your conscious and subconscious mind. That you start becoming exposed to the subconscious. Be it via implicit memories, things that were kind of embedded during childhood and stuff like that, and a lot of things that are, unless you enter into different types of trance states, you don't really have access to, and so floating is another way to do that. That's why, since you like a pitch dark room is a big part of other types of shamanic traditions and things like that to help coerce that sort of permeability between the conscious and the subconscious mind.
Yeah.
And you're right. These things, once you kind of start getting relaxed and get your float legs underneath you, it's not necessarily going to happen the first one. It could, totally could.
Yeah.
And it does for some people. But once you get your float legs underneath you, these things start to bubble up.
Yeah. No,
whatever's under
the
there, it's gonna
communication
come out.
between the subconscious and the conscious mind is an interesting one. And one of the more powerful experiences I've had in there as well was West Coast Float in Whistler. I had just broken up with my girlfriend, ended my lease, and quit my job all in a week, knowing we were about to go do Float Toronto.
Wow.
And knowing it was a good decision,
Wow.
a great life decision, I really was happy with it, like consciously. But I got in the tank, and I was just kind of playing around. Your thoughts are going all over the place, and then I started being able to hear my heartbeat really loud. And I decided to see if I could control my heartbeat at all, and I couldn't at all, like none whatsoever. And that was an interesting experience because I realized at that point was that there's a whole part of your system that you don't have any control over.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd been ignoring it to some extent, right? Ignoring it financially by taking this huge risk and giving up this great relationship and giving up my place to live. I was hitting the road. We didn't have a place. We ended up not having a home for over a month and a half. So that was really, all those things were actually much harder than I anticipated. And it was interesting to have that conversation with myself in there. I didn't expect it at all.
Yeah.
And but yeah, that was a conversation between the conscious and the unconscious
Cool.
mind that I wasn't anticipating at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's definitely some nutty things that can happen in there. And, for me, I'll use it a lot for recovery, just, from running a float center and running a business in general.
Yeah.
It is a lot of work, and it's stressful.
That's what it's come to me.
Yeah.
For me, recently, it's mostly been that. And you just come out of there feeling relaxed, happy with your life, and it just kind of helps you put things in perspective a little bit.
I mean, for a stressed out small business owner,
Right.
like this is such an essential tool.
Absolutely, yeah.
I mean, you can go in after your week and blow out all that stress and go
Yeah.
enjoy your weekend if you have a weekend.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I
For
think
sure.
I think really floating a float center should be in every major city for sure.
And the
Like,
truth is these days that it's not just small business owners. People are stressed at work, stressed in life in general. And it's tough, and it's a great way. We have a lot of people, Friday night's always a popular time. They come in Friday afternoon, Friday evening, and kick off their weekend that way. And like I was explaining to you guys the other days, a lot of people have been coming in on dates. It's been a huge thing. People really like doing that. It's a way for kind of couples to gear down together.
Yeah.
A lot of times you
We
go
do
out
that.
on a date
Yeah.
and you kind of book a night off together, and then it ends up in a fight or something like that. And it has nothing to do with the relationship. It's more just you're carrying stress from the rest of your life, and you're in a bad space.
Yep.
And floating kind of guarantees that that's not going to happen, because we've had restaurants all around the area saying that couples coming to eat after floating are just like completely blissed
way more
out.
chilled out.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's a nice way to kind of guarantee that you're going to have a nice time when you book that night off for yourselves.
Cool.
There you go.
Let me ask your opinion on this. So, tanks versus pods versus cabins.
I haven't floated in enough different tanks, to be honest with you. A lot of because you guys had Oasis when you opened here, and that was a bulk of my floating in the early days. And then we have Oasis tanks. So I've floated in a few other tanks, but most of my floating has been done in the Oasis.
Why did you go with the Oasis?
Ultimately, it comes down to managing expectations in terms of your experience. We loved all the new pods that were coming out, but then you always hear some kind of issue one of them are having. And the Oasis, at least you know what you're getting. It was they've been around forever, and it's a good float. It's a great
float for one, and also I love the Oasis things. You can fix everything on there.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, if something goes down with the system, you
really
can just bring a plumber in and they can fix it, no problem.
I mean, we fix our stuff on our own now.
Yeah, we've done a bunch of the fixes on our own. It's just a little bit handier to have a plumber in there, so you know that the gluing's being done perfectly and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah,
they have a little bit more experience.
Yeah, we have some salt drips. I'm not gonna lie, but
exactly.
Happens.
Yeah,
you know.
Yeah, so exactly the same thing as us. I did a couple of my own. There's a couple of little salt drips, and you can bring the plumber in, and he just makes sure it's perfect.
Yeah, perfect.
So it's kind of handier that way. It costs a couple $100, but you know you're gonna not have to cut someone's float short because something goes wrong.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. I personally find I love the tank experience myself. I think it's perfect. I think it's not perfect, but it's a very good float experience.
Yeah.
And if you're talking from a float center operator perspective, you're going to spend $10,000, $12,000 on a tank, or you can spend $20,000, $30,000 on a pod or something else.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, you're floating in a black box full of water.
Exactly.
When you close that
so as long
lid,
as it can do that, it's fine. Long term, I think there's still a lot of room for improvement.
Oh, for sure.
There's no question. And there's some exciting things going on in terms of circulating air a little bit better, in terms of heating more accurately. We were talking to Chris from ProFloat, and he's talking about putting a heater into the filtration system that would allow you to change the temperature up to 2 degrees in between floats, which can be huge, because obviously one of the big issues in floating is guys like to float around 94 and girls around 95, or even maybe a little bit higher. And in general, we know what the tanks are testing at. We are generally pretty good at putting them in the right tanks. It usually works out pretty well. But the odd time, a girl will come out saying that they were a little bit cold, and that's not ideal. So if you have a girl going in and you can up the tank temperature by 1 degree, that's so huge.
Well, that's what the float pods have. They have an inline heating system, that's what they improved upon big time versus the isopods, because isopods, all they had was the inline heating system, and they didn't have any heating pads at all.
Ah, interesting.
So the isopods continually drop temperature during your float.
Really?
But the float pods, it heats it, while you're filtering, and then you have heating pads as well.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. So he's done a really good job of correcting some of those problems. The only thing I didn't like about them was just they were too short for me. That was the one thing.
Yeah.
Other than that, I think they're a solid product, and it's definitely a good price for what you're getting.
Yeah.
I liked a lot of stuff he was doing, like with the repair and maintenance packages. Like he sends you a whole parts kit. Something breaks down, you're down for an afternoon max.
Yeah, I'm excited about what's going on in the industry. There's a lot of manufacturers who are really committed to making improvements and really making things essentially delivering the best possible experience. And so it'll be interesting to see where it goes, but it's nice to know that there's a lot of really dedicated people working on that.
Yeah, and one of those being Chris, like you mentioned.
Yeah,
Chris is actually, he'll be ProFloat. Definitely want to give him a shout out because he's helped us promote this show a lot. So that's ProFloat, and they're actually based out of Chilliwack. So some local boys. That's the first, in my mind,
couple too.
it's probably the first float pod style floating device being manufactured in Canada ever, to my knowledge. So kudos to him for going all the way.
Except
and
for those people in Alberta.
Well, they weren't making pods.
Oh, they're not making pods.
They were making like a tank style, but one was an open float tank, and the other, this is called Saltwell.
Saltwells.
Yeah, but they're not open anymore. So.
Oh, they're not.
No.
Okay.
No, but.
I think that I'm really hopeful for what's coming, whether it's the float pod and improvements they'll make, or Chris at ProFloat or someone else. There's a lot of people out there with, that's one thing that this industry does. It breeds a lot of passion. So there's a lot of people who are really passionate about floating, and they're putting in a lot of hard work. And whether it's operating a center or manufacturing tanks, we'll get there pretty soon.
Yeah, and I think that's the rise of this industry happening right now. You got a lot of people putting tons of energy, time, and money into tank manufacturing. And you got people putting tons of time, energy, and money into center operations and center creations. And now you're starting to see like things like flotations locations. As I say that right? Flotation locations or flotations locations?
Yeah, flotationlocations.com is really awesome if you're traveling and you want to look for a float center.
Yeah.
If you're used to coming to Float House or Float Toronto and you're in another city and you want to find somewhere because you're jet lagged or whatever, just check that out and you'll be able to find something most likely.
So the cool thing is you're starting to see like the marketing side kick on. Not even just from it's not just from a float center. This is a guy that just he has a forum and a search engine basically for it. So and now they just recently partnered with On It, which is a huge a huge platform for them. So it's so all these things are feeding into it, and that's going to expose a lot of people to floating. And from our early onset is that a lot of people have overwhelmingly positive experiences. But like you said, this is where the research needs to come into play, and updated research is really important. This was what I was going to add on before, because if doctors like to see modern papers, if they see something dated 1986, they'll probably assume it's
and they don't want to hear it from us.
Totally,
they don't want us showing them
a business owner,
at all, right? So
patience, that's where you're going to start getting people to
patients and other medical professionals. That's the other one.
Right. Yeah. So, but it's all going in the right direction. It's all going in that right direction, and that's what keeps a lot of optimism on our side as well, and the pursuit for growing this business and to get as many people floating as possible. And
well, that's happening now for sure. I mean, we're seeing an explosion in float centers, especially Vancouver, but everywhere, really. Every week I hear of a new one popping up, or a new one's following us on Twitter or something like that. It's nuts to see how many people.
Australia is a big market for it now. I'm seeing lots in Australia come up.
They have float tanks at their Olympic training facility, so I think it's quite big.
That's been there for a long time.
Yeah, exactly.
And it's really cool because there's a post going around social media. We were talking about it earlier. The Patriots, New England Patriots, actually installed a U.S. Genesis float pod in their training facility. So you got NFL guys now floating. In fact, before the Super Bowl, both teams were floating.
Yeah, exactly. So the Seahawks
have
have guys floating at, I guess, Urban Float and Float Seattle. And then the Patriots have their own tank. And then obviously the Super Bowl was being held in Arizona, so they
were floating
while they were down there. They went to see True Rest, and they had guys from both teams come in.
And the huge thing about that is, Super Bowl week is a crazy week. But yet these guys are recognizing the benefit and prioritizing it so much that they're going to go out of the way to go and float that week before the biggest game of their life.
It wasn't necessarily close by either.
No, exactly.
But that shows how worthwhile it is. And to the point where Brady actually put one in his house recently. Tom Brady's got a float tank in his house. Wayne Rooney has one in his house.
So you got guys like that and start to endorse, and that's what we really need, like celebrity endorsement of types.
Yeah, we've had Argos in, Maple Leafs in. Like people are getting it. Like it's coming.
And also the whole MMA scene, right? A lot of MMA fighters are into floating now.
Yeah, naturally, it's really growing in that community through the podcast, obviously.
A guy I used to train with in Toronto. He was named Mark Bocek. Remember? Have you ever heard? He's in the UFC. He had a nice little run in the UFC. He didn't excel that well, but he made the UFC and was fighting.
It's pretty impressive.
It's a big show.
Yeah.
I remember just a couple weeks ago he posted a picture of him floating at some place in Toronto.
We've had a ton of martial artists. A lot of Muay Thai.
Yeah. But it's definitely catching on with the right groups of people for sure. I like to see a little more artists coming through. To my knowledge, I haven't seen a lot of that yet.
Float On's done a good job with that in terms of their art program, getting a lot of artists come through, and that's something we're looking to launch something similar soon. Basically just giving away floats to people to kind of help spur creativity. It's such a cool opportunity.
No, that's something that I have almost ready to go. Actually, I started a long time ago, and I mean, it just kind of got away from me. Is doing an art book as well, because I love that art book. The artwork from the Void publication that Float On
those
produced.
are the cool things about running a float center, obviously.
Totally. So I'd love to recreate that, do a Vancouver version of that. You know, artwork from the Void Vancouver.
Yeah.
And have that. I think it'd be outstanding to see what people produce, and
Yeah.
because it's a different way. Like we have, and most float centers do have the experience journal, where people can come and write their experience, and some people kind of just say, you know, nice amenities, like maybe compliment the space,
Yeah.
but then a lot of people actually share some really cool, intimate stuff.
It gets very interesting. It's really
Yeah.
cool to flip through there, see what's new,
Yeah.
and there's always kind of something that's really powerful and you know, kind of touching in a way.
Oh, totally. Yeah. No. And I think that taking it to the next level and seeing like a visual creation of art,
it'd
I'd
be
love
really,
to see what
really
people
neat.
can start just producing there.
Yeah.
You know, super cool. But do you? I forgot what I was gonna say.
It's okay. It's okay to have pauses. Remember, we're getting through that whole thing that we have to talk
yeah.
all the time. It's okay.
Well, we figured that Rogan's podcasts are so just so chill.
Yeah.
You know, and Brian Rose's are very formal. London Real. I don't know if you listen to London Real.
I've
at
listened
all.
to it a few times. Yeah.
So, and they're awesome. I mean, he does an amazing job. And ours are kind of just like this hybrid sort of thing that we just throw together.
We're definitely more Rogan style, but it's just more of a conversation than anything else. You know, we're aiming for bigger and bigger guests. So we want to get David Suzuki on here. That's the next. That's the next
That'd be
big
cool.
name we want to get.
That'd be really cool.
We'll get some seeds planted. So
Yeah, if anyone knows David Suzuki out there,
send them our way.
hook us
Has
up.
he been in for a float yet?
No.
Not to my
We
knowledge.
should start there.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
should. Oh, we'll just
we're
go
gonna
to
give his
Suzuki
whole
Foundation, right?
Foundation free floats.
Yeah.
They're
Great.
somewhere in Vancouver. I think.
Yeah, that's one thing that I think a lot of float centers don't maybe quite understand is just how many free floats should be given out. Like we
We give out some free floats.
No,
Like,
that's what I mean. Yeah. So it's
Like-
it's the best way to do it because
Yeah.
you get people talking about it and people sharing the experience with people.
Like, I just gave out 400 free floats to Y Yoga. Every employee at Y Yoga
Yeah.
got 400 free float.
Yeah.
Got a free float. I did the same thing with Steve Nash Fitness Club. So personal trainers and staff there get
Yeah.
free floats. We're on the members benefits program with them now. Same with Y Yoga. It's just exposure,
Yeah.
and you're getting people, and not to mention a lot of these yoga teachers, personal trainers, whatever. If you're working in a gym, you probably can't afford to float that regularly.
Yeah. So it's nice to be able
anyways.
to help them out. On that
And
front.
then now they're going to be actually speaking to people who can afford to float.
Yeah.
People who can become regular customers here. So it's
Yeah.
a really powerful marketing tool
Yeah.
for sure. And we basically gone.
And it's a lot of fun. Like I get
it's
to
such
like
a cool
make up
networking tool.
gift cards all the time, just
Yeah.
whenever you feel like it, and do the same thing for your staff too. And it helps your staff feel good too. They get to kind of share it with
Yeah.
people they meet.
I mean, Mike and I just finished a little round of blitzing like all the relevant businesses in Vancouver. Like we went to all the CrossFit gyms.
It's funny
all
you
the
guys have been
gyms.
around for a year and a half now, and you're just getting around to that. It's like
Oh no, we did.
something
This
I'm-
is our second or third wave of doing that.
Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
we've
Yeah.
done it several times.
So we went to all the yoga studios, all the gyms, all the CrossFit studios, all the dispensaries, all the paraphernalia shops.
All 60 dispensaries.
Where else did we go?
So many
The
now.
dispensaries. That's a crazy business right now. It's
Yeah.
cool because we're watching
Yeah,
the
Vancouver's
fall
crazy
of
for that.
prohibition.
Yeah, it's very interesting because I was here very recently, and that wasn't happening.
It's
Dude,
nuts.
They popped up over the past year,
yeah.
like
Well,
on every
the only
corner.
reason it popped up is we had Mark Haddon. He's from Vancouver Coastal Health on here, and he's the founder of MAPS Canada. And,
Interesting.
The only reason it happened is because the VPD publicly stated that
Right,
they're
yeah,
not
I remember
going
that
to
happening.
bust any more dispensaries.
Yeah, I remember
know.
when that article came out. You knew it was coming, but
Yeah.
to come back from not being here a year ago and like
Now they're
I knew
everywhere.
what went into opening a float center. Like this takes a build out and like planning and funding and everything. I can't believe how many are open. It's like just
Yeah.
overnight.
Well, there are 60 within Vancouver now.
Yeah.
Yeah, Vancouver city limits.
Yeah,
Sure.
And it's the only place in Canada where it's like that right now, and it's because the VPD has basically said they're not
Exactly.
going to enforce it.
Yeah.
They're
Toronto's
all
not.
actually technically illegal,
Right. Yeah.
but the VPD's not doing anything.
Yeah.
They busted one a while ago because they were basically selling to anybody off the street.
Right.
People were just walking in and they were just selling it. And, and
That was
they
a bit
raided
much.
that one.
Yeah.
But other than that, they leave them alone. They don't even touch them. They don't care.
Yeah.
you know.
It's cool. Toronto's not like that at all. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we'll see what happens come election time. I mean, Justin Trudeau's on record saying he's gonna legalize it
Yeah.
if
That
he
would
gets
be
voted
fantastic if he gets elected.
in. Yeah. No, I mean it will. I mean, talk about a gold rush coming through. That is going to be insane. Like, look at Colorado. Colorado has been, I mean, I'm seeing articles pumped out now where they are literally having to give money back to the residents of Colorado. There's so much tax money coming in, they're giving everyone some sort of like return because of the revenues, which is insane.
Yeah.
It just speaks to the volume.
Well, Jamaica just legalized it.
Jamaica's legalized it, yeah.
It's coming.
Oh, it's going to happen.
There's no doubt.
I mean,
now there's so much, because the problem with politics, of course, is that there's so much money involved. But
there's more money.
Now there's money in pot, so it's gonna.
Have you ever watched The Union? Or
yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you see the next?
I haven't had a chance.
Culture High?
No, I've been so in my own world for the past like 6 months.
Well, yeah.
Since we opened, that I haven't watched anything.
Yeah.
So Culture High is at the top of my list. I'll watch as soon as I can. But I just haven't had a
where
chance
you
yet.
are right now, I remember.
Right. Yeah, I'm sure you guys can relate.
And it's like, and it's so interesting because you feel you're riding a big high for sure. You know,
Right.
at least okay. I'll speak for myself. I was just like, man, 6 months in, it was just like, what? Like we just opened this juggernaut, and we were just like, this is amazing.
I wouldn't quite say that I feel that way. There's always you know, because actually part of it might be that we saw what happened in Vancouver with all the competition popping up, that we're anticipating that. So we're got our nose to the ground every day, getting up, trying to differentiate ourselves and making sure we continue trying to improve everything. Yeah. Everything but the center, top to bottom.
Well, that's why we opened up, you know, we expanded this and opening kits all within the first year.
Yeah.
You know, we knew that we had to, you know, well, at least we wanted to. We had the potential to do it, and that's why we did it.
Yeah.
You know, we had to improve this space. We needed this lounge space.
Yeah.
This was super critical for the post-float experience.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, and now this is our flagship location, and it's currently the largest in the world. It will be dethroned apparently this year sometime. But
tanker coming.
You know,
where's that?
California.
California.
Interesting.
Yeah. So that's what, you know, they're publicizing now anyway. So until it's open, you know,
we'll see.
We'll see. You know, and it's funny too. Like Floatworks, they obviously have 9 as well in London. But and I think Greg, one of our team members, gave them a call. First, we didn't tell him to do this. He just did this completely unprompted, and he called them up and asked, so how many pots do you guys have there right now? I think he said have available, and they said, oh, we only have 7.
Interesting.
And so we're like, okay, because at first we were kind of like gun shy to even say it because like, well, they're also that, but no, we're like, no, well, we are the world's largest. We're the world's largest. So, you know, until that is dethroned, then we'll have fun. We'll have fun saying it. It's just a fun thing to say.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think I can ever say I've had the world's largest anything in my life. So, you know, I'm gonna say
we'll take that for the short time that we have.
There you go.
Yeah.
But so for the year that we've had it, that's cool.
Yeah.
But
well, I think this next year is gonna just be.
Yeah, if we thought the past year was crazy in terms of float centers popping up, the next year is gonna be even crazier.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there might be some kind of correction going on there.
There's a lag.
Well, I think that a ton of places opened up, and I think in other markets people will be a little bit more hesitant to jump in like that without kind of.
Maybe.
Who knows?
I mean, there's people with money everywhere, you know, and they're looking to invest. In fact, you know, I've been told by people now, a lot of investors are looking for small businesses as investments these days.
Really?
Yeah, because they find it as a safer investment these days.
Yeah. Well,
if you can find someone like, you know, you got to find like a younger guy who's got a solid business plan. Looks like it could work. There's people out there that are willing to throw the money at it, for sure.
Well, I think people, and also people like consumers, I think they enjoy the kind of, you know, the small business experience, to be honest with you. You know what I mean? Like, it's
more personable. It's more homey in a sense.
You know? I mean, and that's coming.
You're dealing with real people as opposed to a big corporate chain where everything's systemized and automated.
Well, that's the beauty of floating, to be honest, is that it's just the people it attracts, from business owners to tank manufacturers to staff to customers, just exclusively cool people. Yes. That's been the coolest thing that we've gotten to experience since we opened, or even before we opened, was just interacting with everyone in the community.
Yeah.
And it's like they're just zero shitty customers. You don't have them.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's so much fun.
We've had a couple.
Well, sure, maybe what 2 a year.
Yeah.
Like compare that with the average business, you know?
That's very true.
Totally.
And I think within the float industry as well, there's a lot of really cool people. A lot of float center operators are really, really nice people.
Yeah.
And I really attribute that to the culture that Float On has kind of pushed.
Absolutely.
Not pushed, maybe that's the wrong word, but whatever.
Exemplified.
What's that? Exemplified? Sure. and like they have this different spirit behind floating, which is awesome. It's
Absolutely,
just like,
yeah.
It's such a
I'm so
it creates
appreciative of what they've
a
done.
lot
It's-
less of a competitive kind of feeling amongst other float center
Yeah.
owners, which is nice.
Yeah, and that's one thing we tried to kind of, and it bleeds throughout the industry. And now we have a lot of people saying that they're going to open GTA or other parts of Ontario or whatever, and they're contacting us saying, what should I do? And we're happy to help them because, one, because we had other people helping us, and two, because it comes back to the experience. And we want to make sure that they're going to deliver a good float experience so that whether their friend tells them, if they go for a float in Niagara and they talk to their friend in Toronto, we want them telling that floating is good for you, right? That's so important.
Yeah.
So,
the good thing about Vancouver is I think everyone's doing a pretty good job at it right now. From what I can tell. I've heard, you always hear stories and things like that, but
well, and in the beginning of anything, it's rough, man. Like everyone's green. You know what I mean? We were green. I'm sure you guys had moments of being green. Like you're gonna. It takes time to hone things in and
like
tweak
you guys
it
were
up.
saying earlier, nothing's set in stone in this industry. There's so much changing all the time that it's hard to really. No one's got it nailed down.
Totally, it's very dynamic, and like you said, that's why like even still, things are going great for you. You're like, no, there's no room for complacency at all.
None. Yeah.
And also too, it's super important to stay on top, like to be very diligent with your tanks because. Like if we had something just go wrong, who knows? Like anything that goes wrong, you get something wrong, especially at this stage where it is still a relatively fragile, niche-y new thing. We can't handle that bad press. We need everything to be positive. Everything's got to be positive.
And the industry can too, and you have a certain responsibility operating a float center. Seeing the potential that this has to impact people's lives, you have this responsibility to make sure you follow through with that. Bringing this industry as far as it can go. So that's kind of what gets us up every day and going hard, making sure we deliver the best possible experience.
Some of the fun of it too is some of the stories you hear from float centers sometimes, but just like just bizarre things that kind of happen.
Yeah, there are certain inside jokes, right? It's like the baby seals in the rooms that were getting salt water all over the place. And
that's a good one. Baby seal. Yeah,
that was one of Misha came up with that one. Shout out to
got
Misha.
some good ones, man. Like Ashcon was talking about at the float conference last year about guys who for whatever reason coated the entire squeegee for the shower in Vaseline. And there's like this blob of Vaseline all over the squeegee, like left in the shower after a float. And they'd say like they'd walk into a float room and there'd be like one shoe remaining, so somebody just kind of stumbles out of a tank and just like goes home without their shoe.
You get shampoo in the tank. And you get like I had conditioner all over the walls before. And it's like,
what was going on?
How did you do that?
Yeah.
I don't even know how you would do it. You had to like put it on your hand and smear it on the wall. It doesn't even make sense, but it happened.
Yeah. Oh, you get the shedders too. You get people that just kind of start playing with their hair in the tank or whatever. And,
shedders. That's
you gotta get in there, make sure you get it out for the next customer or whatever. But it's crazy, man. But you're right. Most of the people that floating attracts is just they're curious, and they're usually and just when you have that element of curiosity in your life, it's a very positive, cool energy to have, and that's what people, especially coming to floating, because you're curious. Obviously, at first about the experience, but then I think repeat floaters get really curious about the deeper experience of just themselves and their mind and all that kind of stuff.
For sure.
So it's a lot of fun. It's been a crazy ride, but it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's just getting started. Like.
Definitely.
There's a lot coming in this industry. It's gonna be a fun adventure coming up here.
I think 2015 is gonna be a really interesting year for us, especially. We're gonna get a really good snapshot of what's happening in the industry. Really early on, and I have a kind of just a fascination about what's gonna happen next. It's been such a wild ride
with everything in life, for sure. But definitely with this industry, it's gonna be really interesting to see what happens over the next little bit.
Sure. And it's cool to be that hybrid of. An entrepreneur, a business-minded person, and a float enthusiast, being in like this crazy whirlwind of this re-emerging industry from its infancy, or a dormancy, I should rather say. And to see how it kind of pans out, because you get, what a unique opportunity to get to be literally on the grassroots of a new industry.
Yeah, exactly.
Like it's crazy rare.
It's a big opportunity, and with that's what I was getting at before. It comes with a lot of responsibility as well.
Sure, exactly. And even if it is a small industry or kind of a niche thing, which it is, but it has mega potential because we all feel it and know it and experience it ourselves in our own lives. And I don't think we're that special of human beings. Like I said, we're not that unique that I'm sure other people will like floating as much as we do, and they are.
The feedback we get every day is amazing. Like I told you about those 360. Oh yeah, we get these 360 reports where they can rank us.
Right.
Like we're consistently, we get 10 out of 10s and like positive feedback almost every day on almost every comment.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like and like when I talk to people out here, I'm just like, how was it? And like I loved it. Like that's the most consistent answer I get is that I loved it.
Yeah.
And like I'm like, great. That's amazing. And then they all have their reasons, what they got out of it, whatever. Like perfect. If you love it, good with that. You know?
It doesn't matter, but where you take it. It's really about the individual. Take it wherever you want,
Yeah, but is there anything you want to add in there?
No, man, this has been a pleasure. Like getting to talk to you guys over the past couple of days. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah,
cool, man.
Yeah. Well, it's been a wild ride, and we're really. We watched you guys and you see how it would go for you, and we were like super impressed with what you did, and you guys did an amazing job out there. And I think you guys are going to be extremely successul in the future.
A formal congratulations, man.
And back at you, obviously. We've been watching you guys since day one, and you guys have done the same thing.
I like we've united the east and the west coast of the floating world in Canada.
It had to come eventually.
Rivalry, come on, this is all float.
No, there's no Snoop Dogg and.
That's too bad. It was Snoop
Biggie.
We gotta get Snoop
Biggie
floating.
Snail.
That's what we need to do.
Snoop would love the float.
Yeah.
I guarantee you that, man.
We just need.
Yeah, there you go. Right. Yeah.
But
cool.
Anyways, so that's Sean from Float Toronto. So float-toronto.com. He's got Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all the above, and of course we're recording out of Float House. www.floathouse.ca. Do you have any promo codes you want to throw out there for anybody?
No, we have nothing going on.
Nothing?
We just, our prices are really low. We've been trying to, that's been our whole motto since the beginning, trying to make floating as accessible as possible.
Oh, yeah, it is affordable.
Our floats are really cheap.
I mean, like, we're going as low as $39. $39 for 90 minutes. Okay, you go compare that to any massage, any float center, whatever you want to do, okay? I don't think you're going to get a dollar for dollar better rate than that. So price is not an excuse anymore. So.
It's true.
That's it.
Cool. All right. Thanks a lot, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for
we'll see you.
Thanks
see everybody next time. To whatever is.
To whatever is.